Hey, YouTube. It's been a long, long time. But recent developments over the last year or so have inspired me to try different things with my YouTube channel. For those who know me, it comes as no surprise that I am a huge nerd. And the passion of my focus lately has been not only plants, but also certain role-playing games, Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder. I've even messed around with, I believe it's called Mutants and Masterminds. But my favorite system is definitely Pathfinder. And over the past couple weeks, people have told me that I could definitely use my expertise of plants and somewhat of my expertise with plants and herbalism and herbal medicine to really give insight for GMs to really flesh out their settings. So let's do that. I'll start with something easy. I'm just kind of relaxing in my own garden. I live in California, Southern California, so I live in an interesting climate called Chaparral, which is somewhere between, it's not really somewhere between deserts and temperate. It is a unique climate which has a variety of unique qualities to it that you can find places in Morocco, Spain, along Mediterranean region, California, Baja California, and there are similar climates in certain parts of Florida, I believe, as well as, let's see, do I know any other examples of chaparral? Northern chaparral in Northern California, obviously, but also, let's see, can I locate it? Can I pinpoint it? Oh yeah, Chile and certain other regions in South America as well. They tend to be typified by pretty warm summers, low to moderate rainfall, and they tend to have somewhat familiar ecosystems to one another. It is a rather uncommon climate that you could find in a D&D setting, but you can find them. I'm just kind of struggling as to where you would find them. A lot of the time, map makers for settings are far more interested in more common geological and geographical climates like verdant forests, jungles, deserts. But I believe that the chaparral and high desert and dry forests are some of my favorites, maybe because I grew up with them, but also because they tend to create really unique environments for you to travel through. You could have a party adventure through an area that is relatively dry, but not so dry that you can't find streams, where the food that you can forage is rather unusual, from small deer to the rare wild berries as well as edible bulbs. I mean, it is, in fact, somewhere between the ecologies of a desert and a forest, in that you can find things like oak groves or similar bay nut groves, which provide shade from really hot summers, but they also provide a high value food source. Acorns themselves are not always toxic, although the most common way to prepare acorn meal in the California region is through leaching of the acorns, soaking them over a long period, which allows the tannins to be leached out of the acorns into the water until they are palatable. And then the acorns are parched and ground into a meal, which can be either mixed with water and eaten. Not very appetizing, but very nutritious. Per pound, acorns have one of the highest protein densities that you can find in nature without hunting. I believe it. I was told, or not told, read and researched and even tried it, that a handful of acorns actually has about the same protein content as your average hamburger, which is pretty neat. In fact, eating acorns, just whole acorns, because in some species of oak trees, they have naturally low tannins. Just eating acorns, huge burst of energy. Really fascinating. But, well, I could go into the medicinal side of things and analyze how you can incorporate them as like little goodies that you can find in different environments. I'm going to mostly go over the benefits of filling out the world. And that's one of my favorite things, is going into little surprising details about different locations that really light up my players' faces. Like describing locations in the plane of Earth, I had looks of wonder, which quickly turned to really, really sad as they approached the border between the Earth and Fire planes. And they basically walked through an old battlefield between the Earth and the Fire elementals, which was really remarkable and actually written in. But what wasn't written in was using details of the characters to help give them personal impact for their benefit, really. One of the things that was in the written in there was that their path would intersect with enormous caverns that naturally form in the plane of Earth that are almost completely dark, with pinpoints of light from bioluminescent or naturally glowing minerals. And one of the things that I employed was I looked at all my players had characters that had dark vision. So it was a very novel sensation for them to look into a completely dark void. And, oh dear, what is that called? There's a word I'm looking for that I'm not finding, where two-dimensional artwork and especially animation can achieve a deeper sense of depth by moving different parts of the background at different speeds. In this case, they would be lost in the looking out into these giant caverns. They would be lost in the darkness, realizing that the caverns are way deeper than they had originally appeared, because with a matte void, it's really difficult to tell depth. But with dark vision, it has a hard limit to its range, and after that, it's low light vision in most cases. And with very few points of reference, it would almost be like looking into a void and not being able to see the other side. Creepy for someone who's used to seeing the other side, because the material plane is full of stuff. So when you're exploring a cave, even if you can't see the back of the cavern, you see the walls, and that gives you a sense of depth that way. Now I'm just rambling. My point was that if you look at the surroundings and create detail of life, one of my favorite parts of the oh gosh, this is really embarrassing. The Lord of the Rings trilogy was exploring Mordor and discovering that even though this is the blackest, darkest spot on the continent, there is still nature involved. Along the river banks are sickly plants that somehow survive the evil of Mordor, the heat, the humidity, the ash, the unrepentant evil of the ecosystem. There were still plants, and probably along with those plants there are insects, especially the kind that take care of carrion, if you're familiar with Mordor. So doing things like introducing molds or fungi in the plane of Earth, or if you're traveling through the Mana Wastes, which is a magic dead zone, you could find desert plants that could actually cause a little anxiety to druids without their connection to life. They would just be looking at a plant like any other person. It would almost look like a painting to them because there's no sense of life coming from them, because their supernatural abilities are suppressed. Their ability to connect with nature here is more extraordinary than supernatural. Or going to a place like a druidic forest, a fey forest, everything's a little overwhelming, or perhaps just right for druids, but for a paladin, every little thing seems to react to your movement, and it could create a great sense of trepidation or paranoia, as it seems the very forest is out to get you, depending on the paladin, of course. So I was thinking of doing a series on to highlight different environments, giving suggestions based on sort of the environments they're inspired by, as well as just the kind of nature you might find in a temperate forest, in a high altitude forest, in a jungle, in a desert, on the edges of a desert, in a prairie, just to really fill out the world. One of the things that I would describe if somebody was transitioning from a dry forest to a desert would be a spicy scent on the air provided by sun-baked plants. One of my favorites being sage, which is found worldwide and could definitely be used to just flavor, no pun intended, but different iconic plants. Say you're going to an area that is in fact like Chaparral or like the Greek countryside, and you decide to include plants that resemble sage with a very spicy aroma and a strong flavor, and maybe even not for mechanical effect, but advise them to drink a tea of these plants to help stave off disease or some remedy that you find off of a peasant somewhere. And then there are the actual strong medicinal plants like wormwood, which is not as alien as it first sounds. It is the European equivalent to sagebrush. They're chemically and botanically very, very closely related. And there are written accounts of the natives of North America and settlers who listened to them preventing illness by using those natural resources to help stave off all sorts of illnesses, especially parasites, which are, of course, everywhere. And in a place where dysentery was a huge threat to life, it probably prevented a lot of death. Not to mention the fact that boiling water in itself helps to clean it. I'm rambling again. But I just wanted to let you all know that I'm not dead, and the tone of this channel may adjust slightly. I mean, no disrespect to the cultures which use herbal medicine. I mean, no disrespect for those who use it in their religious work or in their faith, and especially in their culture. No disrespect. I just wish to use my understanding to help enrich the play experience. I'm done rambling now. Have a good day.